Titan HST's Business Continuity Today, hosted by Todd DeVoe, where planning meets reality.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Business Continuity Today, and I'm Todd DeVoe. And today we're going to be talking about, something a little bit different. A world without gas and electricity, could you still operate your organization? And what this is I read an article in The Conversation on their online magazine, and it was how the flu virus shut down the U.S. economy and, well, parts of the world economy in 1872. And in 1872, if you remember your history, the United States was growing. We're a young nation, just starting to get industrialized. The Industrial Revolution was happening here, and we were expanding westward. But the main mode of transportation for everything, right, whether it's was people and or goods, was horses. And then in the autumn of 1872, a flu outbreak that started in Canada spread among mules and horses, and it's went from Canada to Central America. And the interesting thing for this is because for centuries, horses provided the essential energy to building and operating cities. And so now this flu, equine flu as it was called, just made it clear how important the partnership was between these horses and humans. And so when the infected horses stopped working, nothing worked without them. Everything just shut down completely. And so the pandemic triggered a social and economic paralysis that was, just think of all of a sudden we lost all of our power, and if the gas pumps ran dry, how would we move our goods and services? So this is where I really want to start our conversation. We have plans for supply chain disruption, and in some cases we can talk about increasing manufacturing by adding additional shifts and increasing human output, right? But there are two issues that we need to address, and this current pandemic really highlights these things. So can we really increase human output safely? So we saw earlier on in the spring that the meatpacking industry was really impacted. They lost workers to COVID outbreak at their plants, and then even those that didn't get ill didn't want to go to work because they didn't feel safe. So basically shut down meat production in various plants across the United States. And we recognize this because our shelves were empty of meat products. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but trying to go to the store, not only people hoarding, but the products weren't just being produced. So we need to take an all-hazard approach to planning. So we have to assume that when we have a crisis, right, whether it be a pandemic or earthquake or a tornado or a flood or whatever, that we're going to lose personnel. But not just to injury and death, but also the inability to travel due to infrastructure being down and other impacts of the events that are happening on their families and their homes. So in the case of the stay-at-home order, for instance, parents who could go to work might not be able to go to work because they have to stay home with their children if they can't get daycare and or family care. So when I was doing my estimation a while ago, specifically on earthquakes and stuff, taking a look at past things that happened here in California, I was predicting at least a 40% reduction in the workforce. And in some cases, we're looking at possibly 60% reduction in the workforce. So now, as we start our second surge of COVID in California, the issues are coming again, right? We have a second stay-at-home order. And so how does this really impact your companies and your organizations to be able to provide services? So as you read the conversation piece, which is the conversation is the name of the magazine, on how the 1872 flu outbreak happened with the horses, people had to deal with it. Well, not only did people have to think about the idea that the horses were getting sick, they were afraid that it was going to transfer from horses to humans, which never happened. And the problem is through the 19th century, America's cities were just frequently epidemics of deadly diseases. Cholera, dysentery, yellow fever had to do with like pigs running around and animals running around and humans running around defecating and urinating in the streets, right? And so we were very dirty in the cities. And although we really worked hard in cleaning the cities up, we're going to discuss in a second what's the future of the city. So many people feared, that millions of horses and whatnot being pulled out of the system were going to have this great impact on the economy, which it did. It cut off cities from crucial supplies, food, fuel, just as winter was approaching. Horses were too sick to bring coal out of the coal mines, dragging crops to the market and carrying raw materials to industrial centers. The fears of the coal famine sent fuel prices skyrocketing, right? And produced produce rotted at the docks. Trains refused to stop at some cities where depots were overflowing with undeliverable goods. And the economy plunged into a steep recession. Every aspect of life was disrupted. Saloons ran dry without beer deliveries. The postman relied on wheelbarrow express to carry mail and were forced to travel on foot. And so people didn't attend weddings and funerals and different things like that. So the social distancing happened, whether they wanted to or not. And so desperate companies hired crews to pull their wagons to the market. So literally human power was pulling wagons to the market. Worst of all, firemen no longer could rely on horses to pull their heavy wagons. And on November 9th, 1872, a catastrophic blaze gutted much of downtown Boston, where firefighters were slow to reach the scene on foot and pulling their heavy wagons. So it revealed that horses were not just a private property, but the wheels of our social machine, our economic machine, and more. So the stoppage meant widespread injury, and all sorts of classes or of persons were infected. So not just those lower classes or the rich, everybody was impacted by this horse flu. So if you ever read Taleb, has a book called Anti-Fragile, and realistically, horses made our nation fragile. So as business continuity leaders and emergency management leaders, we need to lean forward and explore how can we make our organizations more robust. There are some things we need to think about the future. What is the future of our cities? Are we going to start seeing cities move out? Are we going to start seeing the concepts of new suburbanism explode a little bit more, or the exurbs taking more and more people? Reason Magazine writes an article here: "Will cities survive 2020?" Now, there's arguments saying that actually cities do better during pandemics because those that are in the outreaches have less access to medical care. If you think about the 1918 flu, more people died in Alaska per capita than anywhere else in the United States. So, what does new urban planning look like, right? Do we have less and less dense housing? Because it seems like we're in California, at least, we're going to more dense housing. Governor Cuomo of New York said that we need to lessen the density of New York City. So which way do we go, right? What does transportation look like? Planes, trains, and automobiles specifically. How do we move people with the fear and the potential of spread of disease? We're not going to answer these questions today, but I do hope this becomes a primer to help us lean forward and look at the future instead of reacting to events. It's going to take leadership and convincing people and showing the science and more. Well, I want to thank you all today for visiting here, and take a look at Titan HST for all your communication needs. And remember to follow us on Facebook, on your favorite podcast player, YouTube, Twitter, and join us next week. Until then, stay safe and stay hydrated.